Welcome back to another episode of the Heroic Nation podcast, the most heroic podcast on the air. Is this the air? Does this count as on the air, like radio, like an old school radio DJ? I haven't listened to radio in so long, I don't even know what those guys sound like. I used to find them incredibly obnoxious, so hopefully I don't sound that obnoxious. Because I go for more of a Conan O'Brien type feel rather than a drive time radio jock. So anyway, welcome back to another show. This is episode 12, and we talked to myself and Spence. I kept him around. So we talked to Dan Skidmore. Dan is a lot of things. He is a true jack of all trades. He is one of the primary trainers at Go Ruck, so he does a lot of their online training programs. We talked about that pretty substantially. He did some time as a CrossFit Regional athlete, so I had some good connection there. He was in the Air Force and as well as a CrossFit gym owner, so more connections. And he's also a CrossFit tactical certified coach. So we had a whole lot of commonalities to talk about, and talked about training extensively, training without equipment, like bare bones stuff like that, and then different breakdowns as far as splits, conjugate splits, bodybuilding splits, all that kind of stuff. So very, very cool stuff, which we will get to in just a second. But I have to take a quick shift here, and I'm going to start you out with a quote. Really good quote I heard the other day, worth sharing, from G.K. Chesterton. An adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is only an adventure wrongfully considered. So I heard that, and it really resonated as far as kind of this conversation that we're about to get into with Dan, but also like your perspective and how your perspective and your frame on things makes a huge difference. If you're considering an inconvenience something horrible, then you're never going to see it for the opportunity for adventure that it is. And something that one of my coaches used to talk about during CrossFit was enjoy the fight. Right? Because you get in the middle of a tough workout, and it gets hard to enjoy it because it's hard and it's painful. But during that hard and painful thing that you're going through, whatever that is the adventure, and that is the conflict. And without conflict, the story sucks. It's boring as fuck. So like you need the inconvenience to have the adventure. So you really have to like change your mindset on it. Now, with that said, there's actually science that goes into your visual perception of an inconvenience or of a challenge. And when a person that's in good shape is ready to go, when they see a challenge, like climbing a mountain, let's say, there is an effect of a release of the neurotransmitter dopamine, because that is associated with motivation. So as you get motivated, you see something challenging, then dopamine is released and dumped into your system, which then propels you to go do it, right? That's the whole purpose of that, or one of the purposes of dopamine. If you are deconditioned, out of shape, fat, like whatever, sick, you don't get that response. So rather than being motivated by the challenge or inconvenience in this case, you're actually deterred because it looks impossible. It's not giving you that release of dopamine that's telling you now go do, right? It's actually going the other way. So how to change perspective is really like step one is you have to get in shape. And Heroic Industries has programs that will help you do this, right? So if you are looking to get in shape, we are opening up our group coaching and our one-on-one coaching for February. And the reason I'm doing this before versus after the conversation is because it is time sensitive. These are only open for a week, and then they close for at least another month, depending on how many we get. So just an example, last month we had openings from January 2nd through January 7th, and then they were full. So these do close quickly, right? So what is it? So I'll give you the rundown, right? So just like many programs, Heroic Industries Hero Builder is a 16-week course that tackles training, mindset, and nutrition. Now, where it separates itself from other programs is that there's basically three ways that you can fail in doing anything, right? But especially like a program like this, like a 16-week course or 6 months of training, like you fall short one of three ways, or somewhere in this range. You have a skill set or a deficit in education, right? You have a mindset or an inability to frame or believe in yourself. So it's a belief problem. Or lastly, the third one is that you have a routine problem and you cannot apply it in real time for your life, right? So most programs do a good job hitting one or two of these, but they fall short typically in the third one, which is the most important one, is the routine problem, right? So it's easy to figure out, like, hey, you shouldn't eat Doritos, and here's how to go shop, and here's how to do a workout. That's pretty simple, right? That's education. The belief in yourself, that's a little harder to tackle. Like, we need to dig into that, and that's mindset, motivation, goal setting, like all of that. Most programs deal with those two things. Now, where they fall short and where we separate ourselves is that we really deal with the application of the previous two, the education and the belief, in your life, because that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where you're going to succeed or fail this program. And that's what's really good about the Hero Builder 16-week course, is that we don't let you fail. Like, it's impossible to fail unless you just absolutely ghost us. Then go screw yourself, I guess. But yeah, so we teach you all of those three things, and how to get the most out of it, and it's virtually dummy proof. So if you are interested, email us at heroicindus, HEROICINDUS @gmail.com, and I will get you set up for one of those slots. So do that. Again, time sensitive. It's going to be open for approximately 7 to 10 days, depending on how quickly these fill, and they will. So hope to hear from you soon, and enjoy the conversation with Dan.
And I was
Yeah.
in the middle of building a yoga mat for one of my buddies.
Building a yoga mat?
Yeah, so I've been doing this Go Ruck training thing for a while, and one like it's you're basically training with a sandbag outside, and so everything we do with Go Ruck is like tactical based, but also like have a functional use. And so you're training outside. Yoga mats are one way, but I wanted to build like a mat that you could lay out all your shooting equipment, so you could have a shooting mat, a yoga mat, wrap yourself in it and keep warm. But they've got like a sewing shop down here where we repair everything. And so my buddy was teaching me how to sew, and so I'm knocking out two of them, and I just got knocking it out.
So you're in the zone sewing.
Yeah. Sorry. And I looked down at my phone and I was like, man, I got a call. We got to do this thing. So,
well, cool. Well, sewing, huh? So we got a dude, Marty. We got a dude. One of our sergeants on our team is like big into sewing, and like as far as like patches and all sorts of other weird stuff. But yeah,
he's tailoring his uniforms.
Yeah.
It's a lost art. My mom actually did it. She had a quilting business for a long time, and she makes beautiful art, basically. But it's become more popular, and I've seen so many. They call themselves makers, right? People making like cool bags and like kit and fanny packs, and really, I mean, like Go Ruck, it started off with backpacks, and now it's evolved into so much more. And we've got a sew shop down here called Scars, where if something breaks on your gear, you send it back in, they'll repair it for you and send it back for you. Lifetime guarantee.
It's actually super helpful. I mean, a lot.
I think sewing is a lot more helpful than people think it might be. My mom sewed my wife's wedding dress when we got married. She sewed all her like bridesmaids dresses, so she's the biggest.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had something on my uniform go wrong, like a molly strap or something tear, and I just take it to her and I'm like, hey, can you fix this? And like 30 seconds later, it's done.
Man, I was hanging out last week. I was hanging out with one of my buddies. He's a Marine Raider, and we cadre events together. And I was kind of this long travel business trip, and so I was able to spend a week with him. And I blew out my you guys know the barefoot shoes, the Chris Duffin.
Yeah.
They're like minimalist shoes. Well, they're these badass little like moccasins, and I don't know what happened, but the back of them just blew out, and I was like, the song Margaritaville, stepped on a pop top, blew out my flip flop, and he had to help me sew it back up because I was lost in the sauce. But yeah, that's a lost skill for sure.
You like those shoes? Those barefoot shoes?
I do. I really do. I've been training barefoot for a long time. I had the lace up ones. Yeah, it's a good fit, man. I mean, they're a really flat bottom and a wide toe box, better than Chuck's, in my opinion. And yeah, they're well made. I'm not sure what happened to the other ones, but yeah, they've been good so far.
So I just ordered a pair of those, but I ordered them half size too small because I ordered them the same way that I ordered Chucks. And I was so pissed off because my Chucks are like here in Indiana, it's like it's like snowing like crazy right now. But I got my Chucks completely blown out because I wear them until they fall off. So my feet have been getting soaked walking around in them because it's the only pair of shoes I got. So I ordered a pair of those and I was all excited and I put them on and my feet were all crunched up. So I had to send them back. But yeah, I'm looking forward to when they get here again.
Yeah. I actually made the opposite mistake when I first got mine. They were a little bit too big. So I've gone through a couple of pairs at this point.
Yeah. I was hoping that they'd be durable enough to wear like on duty. But I don't think I want to roll the dice on that one. They're a little
No, you need the I don't know what your duty boot is, but the Go Ruck Mac V1, man. I put countless miles on it and they're light enough to run somebody down if you need to, but pretty waterproof. I've done a bunch of snow events, in some real cold events in Indiana, Michigan, like walking through the snow and no issues.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have to send me the details on that. I need a new pair of boots too.
I'll try to just send you a pair after we get off the call. Yeah, how's that sound?
That'd be even better. Well, cool,
Test
man.
and development, bro.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we get too deep into conversation, like I know you a little bit from the seminar, from the Conjugate Tactical Seminar, but like fill me in more. I want to know more about like your background and like your military background and like everything kind of like the snapshot version leading up to where we're at now.
All right, man. So, I grew up playing sports in Athens, Ohio, at the ripe age of 18. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I joined the Air Force, for some direction. And I went basically got an opportunity to try out for Air Force Special Tactics, which supports Army Green Berets and Navy SEALs. And so the way that the Air Force worked back in the day was you basically you say, hey, I want to try this out. You go to an orientation course where they're just smoking your bags and seeing if you're going to quit. And then so I got into combat control, which is basically the Air Force's version of an air traffic controller in austere environments, but that also covers the dropping bombs aspect. So telling aircraft, when the bullets start flying and we need bombs on target, given coordinates, given laser designation, and helping solve bad problems with big ordnance. So I got into that when I was 18. Served in the Air Force from 2006 to 2015. In that time, hit a couple trips to Afghanistan, a couple to Iraq, hit mid-Africa, went down and ran all the air traffic control with a small team in Haiti in 2010 or 11 when that all happened. I think it was like January timeframe. So I had a diverse group of experiences, but while I was also I started competing in CrossFit. So I competed at like the regional level from 2011, 12, 13, 14, and then found myself back in Iraq in 15. And that was also the year that they switched to like the super regionals. And I was right on that cusp of like being mediocre and super. And so I didn't make it that year. So that's a real quick version of the Air Force stuff. We can dig back into any of that, but I kind of laid the foundation for being an endurance and strength athlete concurrently. And then when I got out, I transitioned straight into gym ownership. So running a kind of a evolution athletics. So strength and conditioning. We did CrossFit-esque, but not an affiliate. Built an awesome community there. Ran that for about 6 years there at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then have transitioned away from that and continued. Well, I sold the business side, but now I've been the landlord for the last few years, so that's been a transition. And then moved out to Marrakesh, Morocco, and worked on another business project out there. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. Started doing Go Ruck in 2017. So Go Ruck leading team building endurance challenges modeled after special operations training. And it's been a really cool kind of transition from the military and sharing the lessons learned and bridging the gap between special operations and the civilian populace and just building the community there with knowledge sharing and challenging people to do really, really hard things. And so that's been a fun gig.
Cool, man. That's a lot of stuff. How old are you?
35.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we actually have done a lot of the same stuff. Like obviously you're in the military. I was never in the military, just have done police work. But yeah, I got into CrossFit in 07, 08, right when I got done with the academy, and ended up doing regionals from 11 I qualified, or I would have qualified, but I broke my hand. 11 and 12, and then just started breaking down from there. So yeah, finished pretty well in 12, and then almost qualified again and just missed it. And then I opened my gym, which I'm sure, as you know, like once you open a gym and then try to keep and you're doing another job and then trying to run the gym and then trying to do regionals, that usually doesn't go well. So
yeah, unless you have a stellar crew of guys that are willing to put in the time for you, it's hard. It's a balancing act. But like from my perspective, it was good because as an operator, you get paid to train, right? When you're not downrange or working, like your time is spent physically preparing for the next big task. And so that kind of allowed me to have that time. And we also had an awesome staff at the gym. So that was, but starting a gym, you don't necessarily have that infrastructure built out yet. So you're, working those long days. I can only imagine how that worked out for you.
Oh man. Yeah. It was a lot of long days. Cause yeah, when you start a business, especially like that, like you don't start it to really run a business. You're like, yeah, I just want a gym. And the next thing you know, you're like knee deep in like, I'm a CEO now and I'm a CFO and I got to like worry about profit and loss and taxes. Like, fuck this. I hate this.
And the broken toilet and mopping the gym and all the rest of the shit that comes along with gym ownership, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you did that for 6 years?
Yeah. So I got into the gym in like owning, got into a relationship with some business partners in 2013 and then sold the gym side in 19. Yeah.
Cool.
And really that was kind of an organic thing, anytime you're looking at business stuff is like, hey, what's the exit strategy? And because some things you want to do forever, some things last for seasons. And so for me, I wanted to build up a coaching staff and empower guys that felt like they could take it and run the ball further down the field. And so I had one of my coaches who was super motivated to run his own gym. And so for me, like that was really empowering to build somebody up from, zero to hero that feels like they can continue it. And I was like, hey man, look, you can't work on the business if you're always working in the business. So that was a good opportunity for me to relinquish the ownership of the gym and let somebody else kind of make it their baby. And business wise, still structure it so I'm not losing out. But you can focus on other things, which have been the last couple of years.
So
last 4 years now.
When you opened that gym, when you opened your gym, were you still in the military?
Yeah.
Okay. So, were you were full time, right? It's not like you were doing like part time, like.
Oh yeah, I was full time. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think military guys, I think inherently do this better than cops do. But like, having an idea of like something to move from after you're done, you know?
Mm.
Like did you open that gym with the idea of like, all right, or like I'm going to learn how to run a business, or I'm going to learn how to like do this or have this business so that I can basically transition from military into, you know, other stuff afterwards? Was there any thought about that, or was it just kind of like just happened?
No, I think the way that, that I've always operated is like, I'm just going to start rolling and put the pieces together, and however it kind of changes courses, how it does. I didn't necessarily know when I got into it that I would get out of the military. But it was one of those things is like, hey, this hobby something I love, I can make money doing it. And, in the military side, you're deployed for a while, and then you're back home for a while. And so as opposed to the police life where you're probably there all the time and it's like the grind is day in and day out. And so you got to structure your day like that. For the military, it's like, well, from my experience, it was like periods of super high intensity being gone. And then, hey, I'm home and I can focus on this. And then hope to have somebody that can cover down on it when I'm away, or set up the systems and processes so that it doesn't die when I'm gone. And
Yeah.
so for me, just like evolving over time. I didn't know when I first got into it how exactly that would work, but it shakes out as all things do.
Yeah.
So when you started it, did you already have somebody that you could count on to run that when you were gone, or did you have to find somebody
Yeah,
you
yeah,
already?
we had a team of folks. A couple. I think we started off with like two other coaches, and they manage the classes. And you got, just like in any business, you got to have people you can trust to make things happen.
Yeah, I wish that at least in police work, like we would learn, like part of the academy process, I feel like should be to learn how to operate a business, or to learn how to like navigate like leadership from that standpoint. Because like the average cop, this is still a stat, I just checked on it the other day, like the average cop dies 5 years after retirement. And a lot of that is because I think number one, we're on the job too long, and then two, there's nothing to go to. Like once you like serve and you do all this stuff, and like most cops, like most military, I think, like you're doing it for a purpose. It really gives you purpose. And then when you're done with it, like you no longer have said purpose, and then you just kind of like end up dying, like literally.
Yeah, and well, that's a parallel with the military as well, and so you go from not from having a very clearly defined mission and a team to maybe finding yourself lost in the sauce. And so whatever you're dying from, whether that's unfortunately your own hand for any reason, or health issues, or you're just lost. The same thing with like heartbreak, right? So if you're married to somebody for a real long time and then she dies, like, are you going to follow suit right away, or are you going to continue your mission? It's a little parallel there, but I think that, for military guys, just finding the next mission to dive into, and that's extremely important for guys transitioning out, is like, it doesn't have to be a business. It could be, going out and becoming a cowboy, right? And riding horses and wrangling cattle, but finding something to pour yourself into so you're not just lost and like drinking yourself away, or watching sports. And yeah, I don't know what the retirement age of police officers is either, but we see a similar thing in the military community.
Yeah. What is that? And honestly, I think a lot of it's just transition, like transition from like you said, like different seasons of your life. And it sounds like you inherently just kind of do that. Like you're like, that's just how you view the world. It's like
Hmm.
some things are meant for a long time, some things are meant for a short time. And I just don't think, as human beings in general, we do that well. And without like thinking about it prior to, like I'm in college, right? Played football. So I saw a lot of my friends afterwards. Like you play small college football, you're not like,
Yeah.
you're not playing pro ball.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a thing for, almost 100% of you. So once senior year came and went, and we ended our last playoff game, and then it was like, all right, well, what's the next thing? What's the next mission? What's the next, like adventure you're having? And Like I saw a lot of my buddies just kept drinking and partying, and then the parties became not parties, but they just kept drinking. And next thing you know, you see them, 40, 50 pounds overweight and like,
Oof.
maybe a kid and no job. And it's like, what the fuck happened to you?
It seemed like at the small college, more athletes didn't have a plan of what to do after college than the non-athletes. The guys who weren't athletes, they've got jobs, they're doing well. The guys who are athletes are still trying to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there's two pieces to that. I see that with professional sports as well, right? Guys either burn through their money and don't necessarily know what the next aspect is. And there's a link here. I was doing some reading about World War II and like the Holocaust actually, and this is just a weird dynamic, but there was these guys, and in the camps, in these concentration camps, this guy could tell when somebody would die, right? And that turning point, or when somebody would survive. And when somebody would decide, hey, I'm going to live for somebody else, right? Because I have to take care of this other person, they would survive longer. And it's amazing what you can withstand if your mission is to help somebody else. But on the flip side of that, when somebody would go internal and go into that survival mode and just be worried about themselves, that's a recipe for failure. And so for human like psyche, and it's a really interesting dynamic, because when you go internal, man, things are going bad and you're not going to make it. But if you have an external goal, an external mission, you got to take care of something else. Even if it's like, you see some guys transition to sports teams, right? Coaching. Well, then all of a sudden it's not necessarily about you, but it should be about the athletes and the players. They're going to live longer because they've got that external mission. Have you guys heard that stat before, or that
I've
little quip?
Yeah, in a different way. So like, I'm not sure what you're referencing exactly, but like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Like I've read that book probably like 3-4 times. It's amazing, and it's real short. Yeah. But that's what he talks about, like when he had everything stripped from him. His he was a doctor of psychology. Not anymore. You're in a concentration camp. Like right. You don't even have clothes. Like they strip you of everything, including like your health and your strength, and you're just a frail pile of bones. Like then it really makes you look at who you are apart from all these different roles that we play, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't have any of these roles anymore. Like, who are you really? Like, who are you to your soul? Like, because nobody can ever take that from you.
Right.
So that's the one part, but also like what big takeaway from that for me was, like what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to give life meaning, and as long as you do that, like you're going to survive. And that's what he talked about too. The people that had meaning and could put meaning to their suffering, then they did okay, or they did better. And that's when they would survive, versus if you can't give your suffering meaning, then you kind of fall apart. And then like Jordan Peterson talks about that too a lot. Like you have to give your suffering meaning, you have to give your life meaning. And it would make more sense for most normal functioning, like healthy people, that if to give your life meaning is like to, like have kids and like do things that are outside of yourself, like non-selfish things. But if like you're a massive narcissist, you could probably give your life meaning by just thinking about yourself. But I don't know. I don't know if that would be as effective or not. I would hope not, but
yeah. Well, and on a long enough timeline, nobody survives, right? But how can you, even in the worst of conditions, if you can see the end state, or last longer, you can survive that suffering better if you can just put a smile on your face and put some purpose behind it. Yeah, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, because really, I mean, I just talked to somebody about this the other day. Some stuff you can't really make sense of. So it's like, I don't know, like don't try to make sense of it, just try to give it purpose. And if that, does that make sense at all? Or
yeah, and it takes some time and space sometimes. I just went through a kind of a weird business relationship like season, right, where some stuff happened that I didn't fully understand, but had to let it play itself out and then look at it through a slightly different lens to to understand the reasoning behind the changes. And so, sometimes it just takes some time to find that purpose, but it's like finding, even in the moment, like finding what the adversity is trying to teach you or what you can learn from it. That's kind of the way that I've always looked at, like, even really hard evolutions of training. Like I think about pre-dive course where you're getting drowned on a daily basis, and like water confidence courses where you're like, all right guys, hey, we're going to be underwater until a couple of you pass out. Well, what are we trying to learn in this session? Like that's abuse, and it's very traumatic, dude. I went through a real dark period when I was like 19, 20 years old, because you're literally getting drowned on a daily basis. Like, dudes are passing out underwater and you're going to have to like revive them. But what are you trying to learn? Like, there's a lot of lessons that you can get out of that, but the end state is to become dive certified. But one of the lessons is like, hey, are you going to quit? Are you going to quit when you're in the pool and you're a little stressed out? Or are you going to quit when bullets start flying? Like that, we're going to push you to that edge. And it's hard to feel that in the moment, but if you can put that was my perspective then, is like, this is really bad, but there's an end state to this.
Yeah, so just knowing that there's a light to the end of the tunnel, and all the stuff that comes with like achieving goals.
Yeah. Usually a light, right? There's usually something, some kind of payoff.
Yeah. So as far as training goes, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. I know you run training for Go Ruck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So tell me about, like, let's start there. Let's start with like the program that you run for Go Ruck, and what does that entail? I know we talked a little bit about it at the course.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So when COVID happened, and gyms started shutting down, and you weren't able to go and congregate with folks, or the necessity to have some equipment became more important. Jason McCarthy hit me up. Jason's the owner and founder of Go Ruck. He was like, hey, we need to build this app-based training program, and Go Ruck has sandbags and rucksacks. And so I was tasked with coming up with a program where every day is a workout. All you need is a bag of sand and a backpack. And you can find that it doesn't have to be our gear, but basically putting together general physical preparedness sessions that are going to work for everybody, or most people anyways, and keeping it simple, keeping it savage. And all you need is, minimal gear. And then that kind of evolved to, like, the Go Ruck thing. They're a bunch of weirdos, right? They're absolutely like training weirdos, where sometimes it's like the island of misfit kids, right? Where, but there's pride in that, and it's cool, because sometimes going to a CrossFit gym, it's super intimidating, and learning the Olympic lifts and like everything that comes along with that. But if I just say, hey, we're just gonna, pick this bag of sand up and carry it and put it down, pick it up, like keep it basic. It's less dynamic, and so we built that out, ran that for 2 years, and now I've transitioned from doing the daily training to doing more like specialized training programs. So say you want to, build strength with limited equipment, or build, work towards a mountaineering trip that is coming up, or just prepare for a hard event, putting together training plans like that. So that's what I've done with Go Ruck. Not necessarily how I train myself, but there's a lot of people out there that want to fitness, but don't necessarily know where to start. And so pretty easy barrier of entry with, basic stuff that you can have around the house.
So how do you, you made a comment like gaining strength with limited equipment. Like, how do you do that? Like, what's your views on that? If you don't have, barbells and racks and that kind of stuff, or you just don't like it or whatever, like, how do you still strength?
Well, the question there would be, how are we measuring strength, and what metrics are we using? I love to use the barbell as a metric of strength, but if all of a sudden we take that measuring device away, what metrics can we use? I like simple tests, like, how many push-ups can you do? Can you do pull-ups? Strength, it can be defined in tons of different ways. Simple test is like, 10 minutes of sandbag get-ups with an 80-pound sandbag. That's an old school. I don't know if you guys ever done the operator ugly PT test. Have you heard of this?
Oh, I never even heard of it.
Man, I'm going to send it to you. It's beautiful. Actually, before I started doing CrossFit, mountain athlete, and then military athlete ran by a guy, Rob Shaw. They came up with this pretty awesome PT test, and it was very comprehensive. And I did it, 2009, 10. It was either 9 or 10, and it's a great test for any operators. But man, like, it's strength training and endurance. So back to your question, like, take the barbells away, because that's how we gauge massive amounts of strength. But I can still build a lot of strength with a sandbag. If I say, hey, we're going to do front squats, we're going to do Zercher squats, we can add some tempos in there. I'm going to do a lot of carries. I can do pressing movements with, I can do push-ups. I can do weighted push-ups. I can do overhead press. So it becomes a little bit of strength endurance as well. But if the metric isn't a powerlifting metric that we can all, load up a barbell and bang it out, Jason up at the Conjugate Tactical, he was saying, hey, well, you bring your max strength for the team, right? So you can be more useful for the team. I really felt that. But how do we do that without a bar? Well, you can do that in big sets of sandbag and Zercher squats. That's going to build a lot of strength.
Yeah, I think that you're going to give stuff up, right? So like, if you don't have a way to load maximally, like absolute strength, like you're going to miss that as a piece. But if that's what you got, that's what you got. And then when it boils down to all of training is force production, and that's what, like, right, you go into different like the Conjugate CrossFit, right? That their certification, like Shane and Laura talk about that, like it's all about force production. So if you just produce more force for longer, like you are stronger, aside from the arbitrary metrics of whatever, barbells, get whatever, like dumbbells, like those are just, like you said, like kind of arbitrary, because we have them. And sports, well, that's not good. As sports is apparently we have 10 minutes left.
That's all right.
What the hell? Anyway, so because like sports are based around barbells and people have them, it's kind of an arbitrary metric. But if you produce more force for longer, you're going to be stronger, and that's where you can use stuff like just sleds. Like if you walk a mile on a sled drag and your time is faster, then you've produced more force in that period of time. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I like that it's a tool, right? The barbell's a tool. It's a measuring tool, but force production for sure. And then when I'm developing a strength program with only sandbags, I'm saying, hey, well, it's speed relative, right? Today we're going to move up as fast as possible and you're going to control the down. But instead of the sled, our aspect would be the ruck, right? A similar training tool, but if you can ruck a mile faster than you were before, well, then you're able to put more pounds per square inch into the ground and drive yourself faster. And then we extrapolate that to maybe a 3-mile ruck, and it becomes equally important. But I love the 10-minute sandbag test, because that shows you a lot, right? And what can break down over time.
Everything's going to transfer into something. It's going to help you work. Just using the sandbag is going to help you with dumbbells, help you with the barbell. It's not something you can do every single day. And, you're going to lose something in some way. But I think some people don't work out because they say they don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the tools. But you can go out and spend $100 and get a sandbag, change the weight up, do different stuff every day. But some people get discouraged by not having equipment when you can go find the simple equipment, or just go walk, do something simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of low intensity training, just walking it out, right? That's kind of, well, I missed that aspect of when I was in my CrossFit, competitive CrossFit season. But, and it's also getting outside and being in nature and off the rower. That you're sitting inside, it's just repetitive stuff, but like getting outside, man, walking on the beach, get your 10,000 steps a day, 15,000 if you want to live forever.
We were talking about that not too long ago, and I have my body's starting to, break down. And I used to run a lot, and I can't run as much because I feel it for days, weeks after doing it. And I've just started walking a lot more, and I found
Right.
it to be just as beneficial as running. You might have to do it longer, to get what you want, or sometimes I do it on an incline with weight, whatever, but it works just as well as running does, and it's way easier on my body.
Sure.
What, not to get too back to CrossFit all the time, but what regional were you in?
Mid-Atlantic.
Okay. So I always find it funny, right? So we did CrossFit roughly the same time. And like you made the same mistakes that I did. We didn't know each other. We probably didn't have the same coaches. It's like, man, I never did the like, gear one is what I refer to, or zone one or zone two, like aerobic work. Never did that, right? Because I didn't see the payoff with it. And with limited time, I just wanted to do more Metcons. And in hindsight, that's completely what broke me down. And I missed probably 2 or 3 seasons because of that, because my body just couldn't handle it anymore. And then from an enjoyment standpoint, like I really enjoy, like what you said, like getting outside and like taking the dogs for a walk, or doing like, random stuff like that. And like just being in life, not stuck in the gym. And like I missed a ton of opportunities for growth because I didn't see that as important, or I didn't understand how that factored into the rest of training.
Yeah, and that's a mistake that I made as well. But then eventually there was a switch where I read something that Greg Glassman put out years before the whole competitive exercise thing started up, is like, you want to get out and play sports and try new things, right? And for me, that looks like jujitsu, that looks martial arts, rock climbing, being in nature, like doing actual things as opposed to just the exercise for time. And so you get tunnel vision, and then get into your own little sport of fitness. You miss out on all those really fun things that can be so fulfilling. I you learn certain lessons in different seasons. So
Well, and then yeah, absolutely. And then like I look at it from where I broke down, and those repetitive movements and like overuse injuries, and that's what became chronic for me. But my mindset and what I believed was like constantly varied functional movements done at high intensity. It's constantly varied. So it's not an overuse injury. Like, yes, it is. You're only doing this. Like, you're not doing any, like side to side work. You're not doing any rotational work. You're not doing anything in longer space outside on unstable ground. Like, you are repeating the same crap over and over again, regardless if it's constantly varied time domains or not,
Yeah. Well, you're a better coach because of it now. And luckily you learn those lessons, share them with the others, right?
If you can get people to listen to you, like
good luck.
I know, especially with like really high driven, like people that just love to burn it down. I don't know if you see this, like I'm assuming you do, with like military dudes that are just like all in 100%, 100 miles an hour, young, like ready to go. It's like, slow down, dude. Like, you can't do this all the time. Like, you've got to round out your training more. You got to slow down once in a while. You got to learn to breathe, and it's like, how do you even get people to listen to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if it doesn't hurt, it's not working. But you can just try over time and introduce it. Keep, just like anything, present it, and people will find it or they won't. And it just takes some time. It's like that concept of, hey, sometimes if you might hear something over and over and over again, but you're not ready to hear it. Yeah. There's magic in that, where eventually it'll come around and they'll be like, that's what you meant. Okay, that's why. All right.
then the cycle repeats. It's like, oh, yeah, should have listened to this guy 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
Sure.
So you mentioned that your personal training looks slightly different. So like, what are you doing for training? Are you doing conjugate style stuff, or like, what do you got going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm a conjugate follower. I'm hitting heavy lifts for 3 to 4 days a week. I'm addicted to jujitsu, so I'm hitting 4 to 5 sessions of that as my evening session. So for the morning, I'll do like max effort Mondays, lower body work, everything that comes along with that. I could break down a session of my training if you want to go that way. But yeah, so I'm balancing conjugate with a lot of jujitsu training.
So what is, break that down for me. Like what is, because like a lot of people hear conjugate and they either don't know what it is, or honestly, like your conjugate might look drastically different from mine. Like if I was looking at like, Matt Winning versus Jason versus, like Dave Tate's, like it all looks different in so
Sure.
many ways. Like Travis Mash was at Westside and his stuff looks totally different than everybody's. So,
Right.
take me through a day. Like what's a max effort lower body day look like, for example?
Okay. All right. So max effort lower body day, and this is going to change over the course of like a month, right? But a standard day, I'm going to take a barbell squat and build up to a heavy 1 to 3 rep. I might impose some kind of a pause at any level, but I'm just like put all the parameters on it. I'm going to a heavy where it's stress. My eyes are maybe bleeding, but I'm definitely like exerting hard. And then I'm going to transition to my part B is some kind of superset of a hinge movement. So, a deadlift, trap bar deadlift, some kind of good morning, and another alternating like carry where I'm going to pick 2 movements and just get that supporting strength work in. So I built to my heavy, and then I'm going to build my 5 to 8 rep, 3 to 5 to 8 rep, and then for a superset of any movements that I want to complement. And then I'll work in some accessory work, pick a couple moves that I need to work on. And whether I set rounds for time or an AMRAP where I'm just grinding away, I'm gonna attack some weaknesses and also some sport specific stuff. So I know that I love carrying, so I carry every day, sled every day, and in some different capacity. And then typically, like, hey, I'll shorten my conditioning sessions because I'm getting my conditioning from rolling around with dudes trying to strangle me. So, that'll look like an hour to 30 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 hours of high intensity cardio in the evening. And then the next day, I'll throw in some kind of mini session. So I'll hit some more recovery. Well, not necessarily recovery, but some kind of a full body with a lower body emphasis accessory work. That could look like kettlebell work, just something to get the blood flowing and to tack on that mini session the next day. Then 48, 72 hours later, I'm hitting the next max effort work that's going to be upper body stuff. And the cycle is going to repeat all week long.
So that's the same thing I do when I do jiu-jitsu with conditioning. Like I will like take that out. So I'll do like an accessory circuit that'll be like it'll spike the heart rate a little bit, but it doesn't get too super high. And then I know that I'm gonna have an hour to at least 30 to 60 minutes of higher intensity, like interval style, like moving people around,
Right.
or getting choked to death later. So yeah, that's good. That's the same thing that I do, or at least good for me to hear other people are doing it as well.
Yeah.
So with that mini session the next day, you're hitting on the same muscle groups that you did the day before.
Yes. So that's where I'm building in some more volume, and it's not exclusively, but I hit a lot of banded work, high rep. Think about good mornings, neck work, anything that I feel like I can train that I need to, but I don't necessarily want to tax or do something that's going to detriment my next big training session.
So, all right. So, and does that roll into, or is that connected to your dynamic effort day the next day, or are you taking that next day off from like any type of like moving barbells?
No. So I'm going to do the next lifting day on like the Wednesday. So I'll leave a day, and I've gone back and forth, but I actually think that I get better results having a day in between my lifting days.
Okay.
Where you're seeing this gets a break.
Yeah. And what I would feel, and I'd always have, follow the squat day up with a bench day, and my bench sucks. So I've got that poverty bench. But when I've given it a day, I've actually seen better growth. And so, yeah, that's been something that I've changed over time, played around with a little bit.
So what's your week split look like?
What do you mean?
So like, let's say you do max effort lower body on Monday. That next day you do a mini session and you're not lifting at all. Like what's Wednesday then?
Yeah. So Wednesday would be the heavy upper body day.
Okay, so you're doing max effort and then a mini session, sort of like active. I don't know what to call it, active recovery, but like no barbell movements, and then back to the barbell with max effort again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then Thursday it would be the same kind of recovery day, and then Friday back to the speed squats. And then I'll typically do have the speed squats and speed upper on Friday and Saturday. So I give Sunday as like a down day.
Okay. So you're hitting heavy, off, heavy, and then dynamic.
Yep.
Okay. What's a dynamic day look like for you? Like if we can stick just like a lower body dynamic day.
Yeah, if I have the bands, if I have the right equipment, I'll hit as an EMOM 10 sets of 2 box squats, and then I'll go back and forth whether I'm doing speed pulls or just the repetition method for deadlift work or cleans. So I do like still doing Olympic. I'll do power cleans, hang squat cleans, that kind of work. Do some kind of sub-maximal work. I like complexes on that day, and then always jumping too. So I'm gonna do some variation of plyometrics on those speed days.
Okay. Have you found since you stopped doing like definitely competing in CrossFit, like since I stopped doing CrossFit, since I sold my gym about a year or so ago, like I don't really mess with Olympic lifts hardly at all. Is your volume reduced with that?
I got to the point with snatches is I was banging myself in the pelvic too much, and I just didn't enjoy it. Like it got silly, and at some point, like when I transitioned, and this was also a transition from CrossFit to when I started doing strongman and more powerlifting. I just didn't enjoy the barbell snatch. I didn't feel like the risk was worth the reward. So I've basically stopped barbell snatching, but I still do a lot of kettlebell snatches, dumbbell snatches in my programming. And then with cleans, like I just don't feel like I need to go super heavy and, hit or miss a 300-pound clean. Like, what is that buying me? I don't enjoy it as much. So I haven't put as much emphasis into it.
Yeah, I've kind of found the same thing. Like I don't see the payoff as much for what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Aside from training, like to be good at Olympic weightlifting, I think you can get by as long as you can still make the shapes. Like you can still like get your arms overhead or get into a front rack position. Like if you start losing capacity to do that, then I think it's time to revisit those. To make sure that there's not something going on with your movement pattern. But like I think there's just as much, if not more, benefit to doing like muscle variations, which is basically the same as what you're saying with the kettlebells and the dumbbells. Like you're not going to do the same type of power clean or squat clean that you do with a kettlebell because it's more of a muscle clean variation anyway, because you're staying connected the whole time. There's not this, disconnect, reconnect,
Yeah, and I'm gonna favor that triple extension work for strongman moves. So Atlas stones, big sandbags. I'd much prefer to use those implements than Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
But that's just my own style. I think part of it's like a cultural thing too. Like I don't get off on hanging around and like hitting. A beautiful snatch is one thing, but I'd rather like get some dudes together and be like, hey, how far can we pick this up and walk with it, right? And can you pick up this rock? That's what I prefer.
You know what I like too is the fact that stuff is less technical. And if if we all wanted to get together, and like, I don't know how to snatch, like, you don't have to take, like weeks to teach me the technique on it. It's like, hey, this is how you pick up a rock. Here's how you lap it. Here's how you shoulder it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as teaching it, like, man, it's way. I think that'll.
I love strongman stuff.
Yeah.
I made a fingal finger in my backyard.
Nice.
With a telephone pole. I cut it. So
Very nice.
Side and then a lighter side, and just throw it, pick it up, and tip it over, and just go back and forth with dudes. And then I have molds to make Atlas stones, and
That's awesome.
have people over and lift heavy stuff.
Hell yeah, I think that's the best bro session there is, right? And it's cardio for men. That's the best kind of cardio, is strongman cardio.
Yeah, you remember that Julian Pinot from StrongFit?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So like, that was one of the funniest things I ever saw on a t-shirt, was when he put strongman. It's like CrossFit for men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah. And those guys are awesome. Like, strongman competitors are amazing. I think that's a totally different sport as well. It's something cool to play around with, but in terms of like capacity or the tactical athlete, like, man, you're going to move weird stuff, like, hey, pick up a keg, like, pick up heavy bags. And that's very important. If you're looking at like the functionality aspect of it, I think it has always taken priority for me. Even like moving bodies, like, what's a dead load that you can just pick up, and like, I've got to put somebody in a casualty in the back of a truck.
I like to see these strongmen, like the professional strongmen, in and out of seasons, and their body types, and just how much they change. Like, they'll go from 350 pounds to 500, 400, 500 pounds, and some people think of big biceps, this big chest, and then you see these strongmen guys, and they're just big. That's all it is. They're just big. Think of like Eddie.
The last few years too, I think they've dialed in their nutrition, their health, their drugs, to be a better body type, because they've gotten away from that just massive, power belly. But it's only taken a few of them to drop dead for the guys to realize, hey, like, we need to clean this up a little bit, because being that big is not good for you, right? And your body can only sustain so much. And so there's been a big change. You look at Thor, right? And he did everything he wanted to do, getting really strong. And then he went and got into boxing and got super lean. I mean, he looks great. You look at a guy like Brian Shaw, he's probably had the most longevity, but he's changed a lot since 2015. Even in the last 6-8 years, his body type has changed a lot.
A lot of the younger guys coming into the sport now are leaner. They're not as big as Eddie Hall was, or Brian Shaw was.
Right.
They're not
right.
They don't look quite as big as the older classic guys did.
Yeah, they're still monsters of men, though. I've had the opportunity to hang out with them at the Rogue Invitational the last few years, because Go Ruck's been a sponsor of the Rogue Invite, and so we've been able to, like, provide them some gear and just hang out a little bit. And man, they're just phenomenal humans.
Yeah.
So what's you talked about their nutrition, like strongman nutrition. Like, what's yours like? Because you stay super lean, super lean. So I think I even messaged you, like, what are you doing for, like, are you doing macros? Are you counting anything? Like,
no, years ago I was really strict with the paleo, and when I first got into CrossFit, because I was like, I knew nothing, and I was like, well, this is the easy way. I'll just be really strict and do the caveman diet. And I did that for a long time. Played around with a little bit of the zone diet, close to 10 years ago now. Didn't really work for my lifestyle. But I think what that did, of being really strict, was give me a good amount of metabolic flexibility, like a good foundation there. And so now, high protein, doing as much steak, eggs, some chicken, because the chicken's a nervous bird, so I'd prefer red meat, but a lot of eggs. I'm a big fan of the dead diet, dozen eggs a day. I think that works really well for a lot of guys. Well, could work really well if you can get past the fear of cholesterol or whatever. And then, plenty of fats, but basing my carbs off of my intake. I know that for me, I think I perform better eating a little dirty. So I'm not going to like restrict my sweets too much, but I'm not eating trash. No soda. I'm going to stay away from like fried foods if I can. Never eat like chips or bullshit like that. But just try to eat real, healthy, nutritious foods. I really like the vertical diet. You guys familiar with the Stan Efferding?
Yeah,
I think that works phenomenally.
Here for a seminar a couple years ago.
Yeah, big fan of that style of nutrition. So, and also it's just consistency. Like, and I think a couple things like, hey, drink more water, more juice, and stay off the booze. That's probably the number one thing that I think that I've been able to stay lean and not like put it on is I don't want what alcohol does to you, so I just don't introduce those things. I don't want what high fructose corn syrup does to you, so don't let that shit inside your machine. Yeah, so those are my concepts. I'll keep it pretty simple, but I'm not like a crazy zealot about anything per se. Just not introducing trash.
So you're not doing any like macro tracking or anything like that right now. You're just kind of
at this point, I'm eating till I'm full and not gorging myself.
Oh, hey, welcome. So and as far as your carb intake, you're just kind of like rotating it based on how active you are and how much high intensity stuff you're doing, right?
Right. So if I know that I'm going to do something or I've got some big stuff or I'm going to recover, but really like I'm just trying to get it in, eat big carbs, a lot of white rice, always pairing it with a macronutrient dense vegetable. I eat a lot of beets, sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, not a lot of salads, but a lot of olive oil.
Yeah.
Cook everything in butter.
Yeah. Do you notice anything? I don't know how like what I look at now with like shift workers for like cops, shift workers, that kind of stuff is like using carbohydrates to manage cortisol levels and like how the sleep disruption occurs. Because like your cortisol gets all jacked up when you're on shift work. So like using carbs to spike insulin at certain points in the day. Like, do you ever like play around with anything like that?
This one's really good.
Not so much for me, but I think you got a Tarzan back there getting after it.
I told them to stay downstairs, and they're just like, "Oh, let the dogs up." And we had school.
Hey, man.
I don't know if you can see, but there's like it's like level 10 Indiana blizzard. So like school
looks like the young man's just getting hungry. He's getting making a sandwich there.
Yeah, you're supposed to be fasting today.
Jesus.
I'm kidding.
Back to your question, I think the biggest thing is not putting yourself to sleep with alcohol. And that's, which would be essentially a carb, right? But for shift workers or anybody in that aspect is like, take your carbs in when you do. That's my take, but avoid what's going to really impact your sleep and your HGH production, and staying away from that aspect. I don't think like, man, if I eat a bunch of rice before bed, like whatever, I don't really care that much about it, but it's more important to not put yourself to sleep with whiskey.
That's for sure. Now I have played around like when I was on nights, like doing like a bunch of like organic cereal or oatmeal. It's like high carbohydrates before bed, right? So that way that I would spike my insulin, help me go to sleep, and then it would push that cortisol spike back, right? Because like as you sleep, your cortisol raises, and your body always kind of knows, regardless of what shift you're on, it knows what time it is. So you can trick your body to a point, but as you sleep, in the morning, your cortisol is going to spike. And if you went to bed at 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's and you got to sleep till 2, your cortisol is still going to go up. So if you can push a bunch of insulin up, that pushes your cortisol down lower, and then go to bed with it lower, hopefully then it'll push that spike back a little bit where you can sleep a little bit longer. So that's some stuff. And then protein too. So protein and carbs before bed, and then get the fats in early in the morning whenever you wake up. Like if you wake up at like noon or 2 or whatever, and you need to get some food in, then you get your fats in early. That way you can push those carbs and protein towards the end of the night. I have had some success with that and doing that with some athletes. But shift work's a pain in the ass. But you're absolutely right. Like play games with stuff like that, but more importantly, don't use alcohol or sleep aids, like prescription sleep aids that like will just make you unconscious. It won't actually help you sleep.
Right. Yeah. Without realizing it, I think that my lifestyle wise, I've been doing that, like similar to what you were saying. And I don't care so much about timing. I haven't really dug into that for myself. I typically, like right now, I haven't eaten. I've been fasting, ate last night, but I'm going to break my fast 11:30 and then eat a big breakfast and then a big dinner. So that's how I eat most days.
So are you doing fasting on purpose, or are you just kind of like going with the flow of the day and kind of seeing how it goes?
It's a little bit purpose. One, I feel like my energy is higher in the morning. And so I want to use that and like get a bunch of work done and then earn my food. So I'm always going to do some kind of physical work before I earn my breakfast. And I've made that kind of I made that deal with myself of like, hey, I got to do something, right? Because I'm not just going to wake up and eat just because, yeah, I'm hungry, but you have to earn it, And so even if it's 100 push-ups, right? Do your work, take no 0 days before you earn food. And if you don't do the work, well, then you don't earn the food, and treat it like a missed hunt. And I do believe like later on in life, my father-in-law, he fasts 3 days a week for full 24-hour periods. And then I think occasionally he hits a 48, and that's done really well for him. But for me, like my energy output, not really there yet. So it's intentional, but it's also just like, how my day is structured.
And are you doing that every day?
For me, like waking up, working, and then eating breakfast after I get some work and small exercise in or full lifts. Yeah.
So I think when you talk about high stress and shift work and stuff like that, the fasting protocols are really important for several reasons. And I've been like mildly obsessed with this idea and the concept of autophagy lately, where it's like you go for those extended periods of fasting and your body starts to slough off those precancerous and cancerous cells. And if you're working shift, you're working military, you're working law enforcement, like the cancer rates are outrageous because of all the stress and lack of sleep. And like utilizing some type of fasting protocol and then understanding how to use short-term and long-term fasting for health is like super critical. But it's also like it can get pretty complex too in some ways. So like having an idea on how to utilize stuff like that is pretty important.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting you brought up fasting because I've lived in Morocco the last few years, and it's a Islamic country, and so every year they have Ramadan. Are you guys familiar with Ramadan? Okay, so you don't eat anything during the day, and so you go from morning to the night until the final call of prayer, fasting for an entire month or 6 weeks. You can extend that out, but just as like a practice, guys sometimes like get it in their head, hey, I'm hangry, right? I can't control my emotions because I'm a little hungry. But man, like push that aside, and it's just one of those discipline things that I think can have. It's a warrior culture, right? Like, hey, you think you get to eat just because you've been out on the battlefield? Like, nah, hit the reset button, and you're not gonna miss out on anything, and your pants are probably gonna fit better too.
Yeah, the only downside I've seen to some thought process like that, like You know, like you mentioned, like, hey, you need to earn your food. Like definitely
Mm,
like the concept of like earning carbohydrates for some athletes that need to lose weight. Like, yeah, definitely some benefit and some truth to that. The only downside is if it creates like some fucked up eating disorder or disordered eating, you know, where it's like, oh, I didn't work out today. I need to work out before I eat. Well, that's usually true. Like you need to be active if you're going to consume like calories. Then that you know, like that's like we consume calories in order to be active, right? So if you're not being active, do you really need the calories? Like maybe, maybe not, or
sure.
maybe not the same kind. But if you're, I've also seen it where people have like developed full blown like bulimia, like the type of bulimia where it's like exercise is the activity, not purging. So like you don't throw up, you go and you use exercise as your purge, basically. So
Yeah.
it develops this belief that that's what you have to do in order to eat. Like if I don't work out, I don't eat. It's like, well, you need to eat because you're dying, you know.
Mm,
So there's a whole nother rabbit hole to get down with that. And then so the way I kind of rephrased it with some people is like you need to earn your training sessions through your lifestyle and recovery. Like you don't get to work out unless you are recovered, and that means fed. You know, like you don't get to
mm,
work out hard without being fed. And I think that's something to look at too. Is like, you know, if you're talking about athletes or people that are training hard in jujitsu 3 times a week, CrossFit athletes, strongman athletes, like it's not about health at that point. You know, you understand like you're training for something other than health. If you want to be really, 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 really good at a sport or in a performance or something like that, like that's not really a health thing anymore. And you need to make sure that you are eating in order to survive that, because every training session that you have, you kind of dig yourself a little hole, and if you don't put dirt back in that hole, you're going to be bottomed out and trashed before the end of a year.
yeah, I like that concept. And I also use the dig in the hole analogy for sure. I like that mindset. Yeah, it is a very important thing to look at. You know, nothing's black and white. Um, but and everybody interprets and infers diets and like, you know, the relationship with food differently. But man, like gotta feed the machine.
Yeah, yeah, in some way, and that's where it's so individualized, where it's like, you know, some people like need to like be off of carbohydrates completely. Some people need to be like on a ton of carbohydrates, and it just depends on where you're at. Like we mentioned earlier, like some things are seasonal, you know, and nutrition to me is the same. Training too, to an extent, but nutrition especially, it's like, well, which diet works, which diet's the best, which diet, and they're all just tools, you know, especially
Hmm.
nutritionally. And I think like Mark Bell talked about it in a Powercast one time, where it was like maybe a carnivore diet is the right choice for you right now, but it doesn't mean in a year like a vegan diet wouldn't be a good choice for you. Like it's just a tool, and it will elicit a different like stimulus and response, which will create
Yeah.
adaptation. So it's like you just have to be very, very open-minded and not dogmatic about nutrition.
Yeah, and keep an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out.
Yeah, don't be stupid. Like if you're stupid, you're stupid. Like yeah. So yeah, man, what else you got going on? Like and then where can people find you on like social media? I know you got a good Instagram page that you run. You post a lot of good content there that I pay attention to.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so biggest thing, like man, we got a bunch of Go Ruck stuff. There's a lot of facets to that, whether it's hard events with team building stuff. There's some individualized stuff. We got some big events coming up this spring. Also, like my stuff out in Morocco, you know, like my main thing, we have a boutique hotel in Marrakesh, Morocco. And so part of our goal was opening up that side of the world to Americans, to travelers, to experience that culture and to have like a safety net. It's not dangerous by any means. I've actually never walked down the street there. You know, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida right now, and it's like, I don't know that I want to go to that side of town.
Don't go to
But
Atlanta.
man, yeah, oh, bro, Atlanta. Well, and we stay in Athens when I'm back in the States, but you know, and in America, like it's, hey man, you know, you stay strapped or get clapped, right? The danger is there, But in Morocco, I've never felt that way. And so I want to open up that side of the world because it feels like, bits and pieces of Afghanistan or Iraq, but also California and Arizona. And there's real beauty there, that people need to get past the fear that has been instilled in them since, 2001. And so we've got an awesome place out there. Everybody that listens to this is invited. Hit me up. I love communicating. I love, just meeting other awesome folks. And you can hit me up through Facebook, Cadre DS Delta Sierra, or my Instagram, and I'm always open and just love building the team.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, before we go, I guess that do you ever go to Disney?
In Florida?
Yeah, like Epcot.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So they are closing the Morocco pavilion.
Yeah.
What's up?
Right.
You know anything about that at all?
Yeah. So during COVID, nobody was coming to Disney, and they just went bankrupt. The Moroccan side just went under. I mean, and unfortunately, Morocco, the kingdom of Morocco, kind of handled COVID similarly to California, which I think 2020 hindsight, I don't know that that's the best way to handle things. But for them, like being here, whoever was running it, I don't know that they could staff it, and so I think it just went bankrupt. There was an interesting article about that. But hey, don't go to Disney World. Go see the real thing, right? And you're gonna enjoy it even more. That was my first taste of Morocco and belly dancers and couscous and all that. Years later, I did when I was a young dumb airman, I did the drink a beer at every country challenge, and that's a good time.
2 years ago.
Nice, but not good for your recovery. So I don't recommend it as a trainer, but a damn good day to be had with Mickey. I'll send you an article back on the backside, but man, I don't know past that if they're going to reopen it. I'm sure somebody will, but it's just one of the fallouts from the COVID stuff, unfortunately.
Man, that sucks because I always loved that restaurant there was always one of my favorites. But
yeah. Well, come have the real thing, man. I'll hook you up.
Deal. We're in.
Cool. Yeah.
All right, we'll stay on for a quick second. I'm gonna shut this down, but thank you so much, dude. And we'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me on.
That was the Heroic Nation Podcast, episode 12, with Dan Skidmore of Go Ruck. And thanks for listening. Again, if you have any ideas for shows or guests that we should have on, or if you would like to be a guest on this show, just hit me up, heroicindus@gmail.com. And again, make sure that if you are interested in the Hero Builder Protocols, the 16-week course, group or individual, make sure that you hit us up immediately, because again, these spots will fill up. So until next time, live heroic.